Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey, and in today's video, I'll be taking an early look at my transfer plans ahead of Game Week 23. Welcome back everyone to another video. Today, I'll be taking a look at what I'm thinking ahead of Game Week 23 with 2 free transfers, 0.3 in the bank. But first off, we definitely have to talk about Game Week 22, and honestly, this is a part of the video that I was really dreading recording because it has been an absolute nightmare. Probably one of the worst game weeks I've had in a good couple of seasons now. 32 points, down to 374k, a big red arrow, and it's only going to get worse tomorrow with Bournemouth and Brighton playing. Not massive ownership in that game, but I've got no players playing, so it's only going to get worse. I might end up around 400k, which, considering going into the Christmas period, I was just outside the top 200k, it's really not gone well. So it's been a tough period of the season for me, and I'm just hoping that I can get back on the front foot quickly. I've got the wild card, I've got all my chips left to use, so I've still got plenty of hope. There's plenty of time to turn it around, almost half of a season to do it with. But right now, I do feel like I'm on the back foot and I'm scrambling a little bit. So if you're out there and you're also struggling like me, then hopefully you enjoyed today's video. Hopefully it gives you a little bit of light relief as well. Leave a like, hit subscribe if you're new around here and you enjoy today's content, especially if you enjoy laughing at some FPL misery, which I will be giving out in spades today. So 32 points, taking a quick look at my team. I was actually really excited or optimistic about how it was set up going into Game Week 22. I had double Liverpool at home to Burnley, both of which blanked. Szoboszlai missed a penalty as well, which is even harder to take because it's pretty much the only reason I had him in the first place. So, of course, goes and hits the woodwork. 0-pointer from him. Ekitike had plenty of chances. 2 points from him, and he's been a disaster of a transfer in because I sold Thiago for him after I think it was 5 or 6 game weeks in a row of Thiago putting up almost no XG. The second I sell him, he turns into prime Ronaldo and Ekitike forgets how to shoot. So 2 points from him against Burnley. Horrific from my Liverpool duo. Same goes for the Man City duo. Haaland, captain, blank, 2 points. Foden went off at half time. Apparently he left the ground with his arm in a sling. So he could be a doubt going into Game Week 23. We'll talk about him in my transfer plans later on in the video. But really disappointing from both of them, truth be told, in recent game weeks. Foden even more so. But Haaland's not been doing all that much recently either. So both of them disappointing. Man United were fantastic, by the way. Rodgers was my transfer in for Cunha. Cunha was benched, but of course came off the bench and assisted. So I'm down on my transfer. Rodgers coming in, I think he had 6 shots in the game, put up something like 0.78 XG, which is his second best in any single game week this season. I think he was quite unlucky not to get anything from the match. But, you know, when you're having a bad game week like I have been, you just knew that none of his shots were going to go in. So 2 points from him. Bukayo Saka, what can I say? Benched again against Nottingham Forest. Apparently, he was carrying a little bit of a knock, which is why his minutes have been managed more so than usual recently. But yet again, it's a 10 million plus on a player that isn't secure for minutes, isn't really putting up the underlying data right now. It's really not good. Luckily, my defence pulled me out of jail a little bit. So double clean sheet from Arsenal. So 7 points, might be upgraded to 8 points for Gabriel. He might get a bonus point added, but at time of recording, he's still on 7. Timber got a yellow card, but ended up on 5. And Lewis Hall, admittedly, was a small highlight. 8 points from him, including the 2 bonus. But again, instead of Thiaw, who I had a 50-50 call on a couple of weeks ago, I could be many points up if I'd just gone with Malik Thiaw over Lewis Hall. Another 50-50 decision. Or maybe it's an incorrect decision, but it's a decision either way that has gone against me. Alderete had barely scored a 1-pointer all season up until the point I bought him, and I think that's 3 in a row from him now. Kelleher in goal, 2 goals conceded. I can't really complain too much about him because he's been getting me out of jail recently a lot. 2 penalty saves in the last 6 or 7 game weeks. So I'll leave him to one side. But 32 points, plenty of issues, mainly in my midfield, but also up front. It's a huge red arrow. If you're out there struggling as well, leave a comment below and we can suffer together. Or if you're doing really well, feel free to show off and have a bit of a laugh in the comments as well. Absolutely fine. Okay, so before we move into a little bit more of a rambly planning session for my midfield and my strikers, that I want to map out the next few game weeks basically for you, and I think a planning tool would be helpful for that. Let's take a quick look at how I'm currently set up with 2 free transfers left to use ahead of game week 23. And on paper, I don't think it's all that bad, but I've been saying that a lot recently and it's just not been good going. So there's something fundamentally wrong with my side. I think we can probably locate that in my midfield more than anywhere else. But let's quickly run through it. Nottingham Forest at home for Kelleher, I think is absolutely fine. Arguably, the way that Spurs are playing right now, Dubravka at home to Spurs isn't a bad option either. But given Kelleher has been great for me and it's a home fixture against a pretty poor opposition in Nottingham Forest who don't score a lot of goals, I think he's fine. My defence right now, I am currently set up with 4 at the back, but I have a bit of a benching dilemma. In fact, I've probably got 2 benching dilemmas. No question about starting my Arsenal defenders, Gabriel and Timber, at home to Man United. I should probably mention, though, Ben White's been playing pretty well at right back recently, so I am a little bit concerned about Timber getting rotated at times for the future game weeks. I'd be quite surprised if that happened against Man United, considering they dropped points in game week 22. They're going to want to get back to winning ways, and they're not going to underestimate Man United. So I think Timber will play, but moving forward, looking ahead, I'm a little bit more worried about him, given that Ben White has looked pretty good. Lewis Hall, can't really complain. It's a tough fixture at home to Aston Villa, but Villa just failed to score against Everton, so maybe it's not quite going their way at the moment all of a sudden, and Lewis Hall has looked pretty good. So it's a tough call not to start him, and I don't want to get too bogged down in my benching dilemma this week, because that will come later on in the week in my team selection video. But I've got Lewis Hall, I've got Anderson, that's the Fulham Anderson, at home to Brighton, which it's a home fixture. He'll probably get defcons, but average chance of a clean sheet. But then also on my bench, I've got Elliot Anderson away at Brentford. He's picking up defcons for fun, so that's probably a 4 or a 5 pointer. Or Alderete, arguably not a bad player to be starting either, away at West Ham. So let me know in the comments below if you've got any strong feelings about which ones of those you would be starting. Right now, I've gone with the 2 home fixtures, but that could easily switch around come the deadline. Let's not get bogged down in that, though. Let's move into my midfield. Bukayo Saka, I mean, sadly, you've got to think that he's probably going to start against Inter in the midweek in the Champions League, which again might mean that his minutes are managed against Man United. But logically, if I was Arteta, I'd want to be starting one of my key men in such a big game, especially at the Emirates, especially after dropping points in the league. But I'm at a point where I can no longer guarantee it. So Saka every single week just seems to be an issue now. And every week that I've got a free transfer spare to use, it's going to be really tempting to get rid of him, downgrade the position, probably to Declan Rice, although Cole Palmer did get 90 minutes in game week 22, obviously scored, did go down at the end of the game, which we'll talk about later on in the video. But again, around the same sort of price, and he's got great fixtures coming. So maybe it's an easy switch if I can make up a little bit of money elsewhere. Morgan Rogers, moving on to him. I've only had him for 1 game week. I think it was one of his best performances in terms of underlying data for the season so far. Got off plenty of shots. Pretty much everything good that Villa were doing was going through him. So I'm not going to lose patience on him just yet. And the idea behind buying him was I'm trying to put off the wild card. More on that later, but I'm trying to put off the wild card all the way through to game week 31, and Rodgers' fixtures all the way through there are really good. I think bar maybe Newcastle away this week in game week 23, I'm pretty happy with all of them, and even arguably the Newcastle game isn't awful. So Rodgers is a player I can almost guarantee the minutes on. His data's getting better, he's in a good attack, and he's pretty talismanic. So I'm not feeling too much regret about having him yet, but Newcastle is not an ideal fixture. Szoboszlai and Ekitike, let's talk about them both at the same time, I suppose. I want rid, especially of Szoboszlai, as soon as possible. And he is a player that is on the chopping block for me this week. But there are also other moves that maybe if I wait an extra week, I can use that spot in my midfield in a more powerful way. So Away at Bournemouth, maybe I hold on to him for just one more game week, although Salah will probably be back for that. If he starts, he'll be the penalty taker. Szoboszlai, therefore, will be off of penalties and loses one of the only remaining benefits to having him. And of course, he's just missed a penalty, so they're not going to leave him on penalties for too much longer regardless, you would think. Ekitike, actually not quite as worried about him, but he is just a lot of money to be spending on a player that isn't finding the back of the net at the moment. But at least he's getting the chances and the opportunities. I don't think he was a million miles away from scoring in game week 22, and he hasn't been that far away from scoring recently in quite a few fixtures. But when you're spending 8.9 million on a forward, he does need to be finding the back of the net more often than not. And even though Thiago's not got great fixtures over the next 4 or 5, he's much cheaper, and it would enable me to make moves elsewhere. So that is an option for me. Finally, quick word on the Man City Man City players, not just the midfielder, but Foden could be an immediate sell if he is indeed out for game week 23. More on that, hopefully, throughout the game week. They've obviously got a midweek fixture in the Champions League. The rumours are that he's done something pretty bad to one of his arms, that there might be a fracture in there. And obviously, people are saying that he was pictured, I haven't seen it myself, but pictured leaving the game against Man United with his arm in a sling, or heavily bandaged at least. So I'm worried that he will get any minutes against Wolves, but I'm not going to sell him until we kind of figure out what's going on there, because if he is fit for Wolves and he does start that game, it is still a good fixture. And one or two of the players that I'm looking at replacing him with don't have great fixtures this week either. So we'll come on to that in a moment. Erling Haaland, he's a lot of money for a player that just quite frankly isn't finding the back of the net all that often right now. But I think I've got bigger fish to fry. I don't think that he's a player that I can responsibly get rid of, especially when there are barely any other strikers in the game that I even want right now. So given that he's got Wolves at home this week, he's not an urgent transfer out. He's probably going to be my captain, but I do have my eye on Man City's dip in form, but also Erling Haaland's as well to some extent. But if there's any Man City player I'm going to be selling more urgently, it would be Foden over Haaland. Okay, so for this section, I thought it might be helpful, rather than having a structured section where I'm walking through my exact replacements, because my own head is a little bit scrambled. I want to run through it in live time and hopefully come to some conclusions in real time with you. Hopefully it's helpful. I do apologize if I ramble on a little bit longer than usual, but I found that people tend to enjoy that more than the more structured sections anyway. So hopefully it's helpful to you out there as well. Let's start off by having a look at the live FPL website where I might be making my free transfers, and then we'll move on to the planning for future weeks in just a second. I've got 0.3 in the bank and I've got 2 free transfers to use. So I do have options, and I can be more aggressive with my transfers if I wanted to this week. Now, one key factor that I'm going to have to probably wait for some news on, but I will be interested to see how Phil Foden is coping with whatever injury he's got, whether or not he looks likely to be fit and available for game week 23. We've had no official word yet, but I'm sure through the week, news will come to light. If it is a fractured arm, then you would imagine we get some sort of official news, and we won't see him in training. Pep will probably say something. And of course, we've got the midweek Champions League game as well. So we should hopefully get some information before the deadline. Let's imagine he's fit to begin with. If he's fit, you got to think he probably starts again. It seems like he only got brought off because of the injury against Man United, but he's not been brilliant recently. So there is a chance, and I'm sure some people out there watching this video will think, and quite rightly so as well, that maybe there is no real injury. He just got brought off because he wasn't playing very well, and City needed a change of pace, something else going on in the midfield to help get them back into the game. And if that's the case, then we should be worried about Phil Foden's minutes regardless going into game week 23. I still err on the side of caution. Maybe I am too cautious as a manager, but Wolves at home for me, if he's fit, and I don't hear any news about him not starting, given that I've got a bit of a benching dilemma anyway this week, I've got plenty of strength on my bench, I will probably hold on to him. If there is any news that he's not fit, or there's a rumour going around that maybe he's going to be out for a while, whatever it might be, then I need to have a plan to get rid of him. With that in mind, I doubt that I'm going to make just one free transfer this week, if any, because Phil Foden at 8.4 million, well, that's his selling value for me anyway. I could buy someone up to 8.7 million. Unfortunately, though, and I think I can do this with, is it affordable? Yes, it is. So, unfortunately, though, I can't really look at the players that I actually want to buy for Phil Foden right now, because I would need to use another free transfer to make up that money. The player that I'd want most of all is Bruno Fernandes. Now, if I quickly toggle that back, so if I went to Fernandes, perfect in theory, 9.2 million. It's a little bit out of price range, so I need to find 0.5 elsewhere, which I can do with another free transfer. But he's got Arsenal away from home. Now, as good as Bruno Fernandes is, and as much and as desperately as I do want him back in my side as quickly as possible, selling Foden at home to Wolves, if he's fit, for Bruno Fernandes away at Arsenal, who are the best defence in the league, and I've got double Arsenal defence, by the way, as well, who I plan on playing, it seems like a very unlikely transfer to pay off for me. I might as well play the odds and not make that move right now. Now, obviously, if Foden is out, then there's an argument to just say, okay, I'm going to get this transfer done regardless, even if it's not great for me this week. Long term, and by game week 24, I almost certainly do want Bruno Fernandes. So barring injury, which rarely ever happens for him, Bruno Fernandes from next week on seems like a player I will desperately, desperately want, all the way through to wildcarding, probably in game week 32. Those fixtures are more than fine, more than palatable for a player of Bruno Fernandes' standards. The other option, I must admit, it is playing on my mind to maybe just go straight to Bryan Mbeumo. Now, I can do that with just one free transfer from Foden, but again, because it's Arsenal next, I know Man United have proven that they're capable of scoring against anyone. They've obviously just gone and turned over Man City, but I am still going to play the odds on this one. And if Foden's fine, selling him for a player going away against Arsenal, it just doesn't quite sit right with me. But again, like Bruno Fernandes, my eye is on Bryan Mbeumo. The data's been pretty good. He's scored 7 Premier League goals already this season, 0.59 XGI per 90. And like I said, with Bruno, the same fixtures apply. After game week 23 is out the way, I'm going to probably want a bit of Man United coverage. He could be one of those players very, very easily. Now, if Foden was indeed a doubt going into game week 23, which is a distinct possibility, and I did want to go straight to Bruno Fernandes, then I've got a couple of ways of making up that money. Now, opportunity number one, and I've got to say it's an opportunity at this point because he's so much money, Bukayo Saka can very, very easily just be downgraded to Declan Rice. Now, I'd be reluctant to sell an Arsenal player and not replace them with another Arsenal player, given the likelihood, and it's not a certainty, but there's a likelihood that they'll have a double game week just on the horizon in game week 26, including Brentford and Wolves. Now, again, that double game week might not occur, but the odds are growing considering that they're beating Chelsea in the Carabao Cup semi-final anyway. If they make it through, then their game week 31 game is going to have to be put somewhere else. Game week 26 seems like a likely place that it could be put. Not guaranteed, but likely. So I've been reluctant to sell Bukayo Saka for that reason, because he could be a good captaincy option in game week 26. But if the minutes aren't secure and he's still managing knocks and injury doubts going into that week, I'm probably going to prefer having Declan Rice anyway. And for an extra saving of 2.5, 2.6 million, whatever it is right now, I think it's 2.6 million in sale value difference, that extra little bit of money in the bank, over 2 million, could be put to very good use in future game weeks. It could be Szoboszlai upgraded significantly. It could be Elliot Anderson upgraded significantly. Could get me potentially to another Chelsea player or two for their good run from next week onwards. I could easily get to Enzo Fernandez for Anderson, maybe upgrade Lewis Hall to Chalobah, for instance. So that money could come in handy. However, I do want to wait and see which Arsenal players play the minutes in the midweek, because if that's Madueke or Saka only plays 60 minutes, again, I'm probably going to end up rolling the dice on Saka playing against Man United and kick that can down the road again. Now, if I didn't want to sell Saka this week, I'll just restore him quickly. Szoboszlai is the other one that, it's just not worked. It's just not been a good transfer in, no matter how I want to pitch it to you. If he'd scored that penalty, I probably wouldn't be too worried about him, but results do matter, and Salah's back now, so he probably won't have the penalties anymore, if Salah plays, of course. But I'd have 6.1 million to spend on a replacement. At that price, you're probably looking at someone like Harry Wilson at 5.9. Obviously didn't do much against Leeds, but the upcoming fixtures all the way through to game week 31 are pretty sound. They're no problem in my mind whatsoever. So I could look at him, could even downgrade all the way to someone like Garner, who picked up defcons yet again against Aston Villa. And his floor, a bit like Elliot Anderson, seems to be really high at the moment. I think the last time he got under 4 points was back in game week 15. So he's done really well recently. Not an exciting pick by any means, but it does save me money. Or the player that I'm probably looking at bringing in, who I've been talking about recently because of the Semenyo sale to Man City and Kluivert's injury, Marcus Tavernier. Now, he's, again, probably not the most exciting of picks, and let's see how Bournemouth do tomorrow against Brighton. But at 5.5 million, he's differential. He's on set pieces. He's on penalties now without those two in the side, or at least given what we've seen in terms of the penalties that have been taken when those two haven't been involved, he was the next taker. So we can only assume that that will still be the case. And his underlying data is not that bad for 5.5 million either. Got 7 attacking returns, 0.34 XGI per 90. Maybe, again, not the most exciting pick in the world. But if it gets rid of Szoboszlai and it allows me Bruno Fernandes, I could get on board with it. Now, the only problem with this is, if I made these two moves, I'm bringing in a player away at Arsenal for someone at home to Wolves, and I'm bringing in a player at home to Liverpool for someone who is away at Bournemouth. So fixtures-wise, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I do think that those two players are better owned and better buys than Foden or than Szoboszlai at the moment. But it just might not be the right week for it in terms of the fixtures. So it does make me wonder, if I can do so, should I just kick the can down the road and leave Foden in for another week, if indeed he is fit? Okay, so I just quickly wanted to wrap up using FPL Team. Again, fantastic planning tool, absolutely free. Do go check it out if you get the chance, fpl.team, to have a look at my planning for not this week necessarily, but next week, where I initially had next week, game week 24, penciled in as a big moving week for my team. I wanted a few free transfers. There are some nice fixture swings, and a lot of my team come into some pretty poor fixtures at the same time. So if we assume that I'm going to roll this week, which I would like to do if Phil Foden is fine, but admittedly, there are a lot of players that are just not playing very well right now in my 11. So looking at this, I would love to change 4, 5, 6 players if at all possible, which makes a wild card a bit tempting. I do just think that using it later on is probably going to be more powerful. And actually, if I just wait for one more week and just survive game week 23, I've got 3 free transfers to refresh most of, not all, but most of the issues in my starting 11. And then I think I'm reasonably well set up for the remaining weeks up to game week 31. After that, I'm looking at wildcarding anyway. So if I just walk you through that quickly, next week already, Alderete will probably be starting ahead of Lewis Hall. Anderson versus Anderson, whichever, it doesn't really matter. But like I said, I've got 3 free transfers, 0.3 in the bank. And I think come game week 24, I'm going to make those 3 moves. So number 1, straight away, Foden out for Bruno Fernandes seems like a given Foden's form, Bruno Fernandes' form, and the fixtures swing, especially in the favour of Man United. I'm going to want Bruno Fernandes. Like I've already mentioned in the video, I've got 0.5 to find. It will probably be a little bit more than that come game week 24, but I can probably cover that off with another 2 moves. Now, this gives me several different routes I could use. I can downgrade Bukayo Saka if I still feel like he's an issue, which I currently do. If I did that, down to Declan Rice, it would give me loads of money, in fact 2.1 million, to make an upgrade elsewhere. Szoboszlai could very easily just instantly become Enzo Fernandez, and I've still got 2.2 million spare. So that's one way, and immediately I think you'll agree that, okay, there's probably 1 or 2 issues remaining. Ekitike might not be ideal. Elliot Anderson starting this week in particular might not be perfect, but this looks a lot better than it would have done, and probably not quite worth a wild card at the least. Or if I just undo the second 2 transfers, leave Bruno Fernandes in, if I did want Cole Palmer, let's say, instead of Saka or instead of Enzo, Cole Palmer in, and then I just need to find 0.9 million somewhere, that could be easily made up by getting rid of Ekatike instead of Szoboszlai first. So straight away, Thiago could come in. The fixtures aren't great, admittedly, but I'll probably play him happily against Aston Villa. Newcastle's not great, but Arsenal's the only one I'd be really worried about. After that, again, all the way through to wildcarding in game week 32. If I can hold on that long, there's no guarantee I'll be able to. But those 5 fixtures are lovely. So I'd be getting him in a little bit early. But if it helps me get to both Palmer and Fernandes, I'm on board. I can make that happen, no problem. Hold on to Szoboszlai for 1 extra week. And then maybe in game week 25, I can look at shipping him off for someone, maybe even Enzo Fernandez, if Chelsea look really good at that point. Or I could take him down to Tavernier. Again, good fixtures on the horizon all the way through to wildcard at that point as well. So all of that to say, I'm not loving my team right now. In fact, I go as far as to say I would love to wildcard away from it. But there aren't millions of players that I'm desperate to get to right this second. And certainly not to the extent where I feel like using a wildcard is going to be powerful enough for me to compensate for the loss later on in the season if I do get rid of the chip now. That won't be the case for everyone watching this video. Everyone's teams are different, and you might have a stronger gut feeling to wildcard earlier. And don't get me wrong, I am very tempted to do so because it has been a bit of a train wreck for me in recent game weeks. But I think if I can just be patient for 1 more week, I don't love my team, especially if Foden's out, that could be a problem. But just 1 more week in the future, I can get rid of at least one of my Liverpool players, possibly both. I can get to Chelsea at that point ahead of their good run of fixtures. If I have any confidence that any Chelsea players are going to start, the lot of them, by the way, because their fixture crunch is horrendous. So there might still be doubts around them at that point. But Bruno Fernandes, for me, is a player I desperately want. I'm just not sure if I'm desperate for getting him this week, unless there is a guaranteed injury in my midfield that makes it an obvious transfer just to get done ahead of buying him next week anyway. Now, this video has probably been a little bit too long. I do apologize for that, but hopefully my breakdown of where my team's at the moment and what I'm thinking, not just for this game week, but also for next week as well, will be helpful to you in some ways. I think just talking it through to camera has been helpful for me at least. So I might just watch this video back. I might be my only viewer this week. That's absolutely fine. But if you are also still along for the ride at this point, leave a like, hit subscribe if you're new around here and you've enjoyed the video. Hopefully I'll be back with a stronger performance next week to prove to you that I am someone worth watching. Fingers crossed anyway. If not, might just have to call it a day, but we'll keep plugging away. Hopefully game week 23 is a more positive one. I think I'm tempted to roll, but let's wait and see what Phil Foden's doing and whether or not that injury is something that's going to keep him out. If not, then I will probably just roll the transfer. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time as we run through my transfer tips ahead of game week 23.